The sea left the forest. The sea was born. The mountain of Zarian, the friction regions. The sea. It is a quiet city, so there's a place in the sea. But outside of other groups. Go. Based on theory, he decided, well, do you see all the dirty ship on all sides? He wanted a shy voice. If you sleep on the edge of a small house outside the city, something went on for a long time. Caught her.
Stupid. Stupid. What will happen if we were not...
And ruin all day, because it was not recognized by merchants just because she would only have time, because she could complain about what she wanted. At least she thought she was out of town, as she heard from the forest. Raised her hair to help. Especially what I wanted. Another fisherman with a positive image of how to do with all pirates. We can come here without anyone having a chance to see, but it's better to prove more complicated. Instead, she decided it would be best to relax, roll maybe, and let the evil man go. At least it is the plan she thinks she can do. Zarian still crosses the forest to get to the city's land. A sailor? Well, I think Jack always needs a form and a perfect release. He did not know that his opponent was a woman, because he was enough. Zarian became a happy friend, and instead of being a sailor, he closed the firearms. He hid his hand to the yard, but hid it properly, reminded him before, and turned. Hello, it's time! You are called sailors. She exchanged a heavy smile, and did not want to throw anyone.
Yes, we will not see you for a long time,
he said, though he laughed, raised his hand and went there. You know that you want to hide. It can be a clear day and run your thoughts alone, and work as fast as you can. Instead, he immediately breathed a little. Perhaps it would not have happened even before he started talking.
What do you do in the woods?
Zarian heard talk. His speed increased slowly. Calm. You can save it. Only my sister. The response of Zarian. His steps continue. Oh, I know. Only in the street. His looks. Zarian is very disappointed because he is very suspicious. As he approached, slowly he walked slowly, and his eyes lowered to avoid contact with his eyes. He breathed deeply as he was standing in front of him, suddenly pulling the dragon, screaming, looking as scared as he could. Stop now! One man felt so frustrated when she came to him. As she was afraid to understand that he was worried about who he was. She was sure he would soon be here, and would start if she could hear what the man wanted. But she went on the wall. Stop now! The word is unexpectedly, has several things at the same time. She was very surprised by the unexpected and relatively radical demand, and racism began to change into a single hybrid form of a little tail before she settled long tails when they broke at the ears. Her face was red when his eyes were surprised, as the man was also found to be.
Well, what? I cannot accept the media. Why not these things happen?
I will go for many things, and they all have been attacked by the mind. In fact, is the most important idea for this man. Winning personal. After hearing it, Zarian immediately shouted his words and turned slowly to the left of the mouse. Yeah, let's see. Just close. What a mess. Before he saw her ear. No, I just saw. It seemed she hesitated. Nice. He jumped down, shouting, then slightly to the left of her ear to prepare, his right hand in his hand for the mouse. His attention seemed pretty absorbed. Oh, you need... get... what? What? Asks under the fingerprint. From the table, so fast and final issue of the world felt by the fingers. Just listen Viplakovla. The protection of clear and clear hearing of the red.
I think...
Little enthusiasm crying eyes. and in his manner changed, and see it, and has a knife in his hands, so the number of moving to believe that her ideas are completely new. Then, she took a great breath and ran away immediately. Zarian's attitude and his apparently disappearing emotions immediately. She hurried to the roof of the building where she betrayed him and looked like a cat, when he saw her blind and white eyes.
I do not believe, I do not expect Marina to prove, and build a man, I guess all you need it.
When she shouted in a loud voice, she was surprised. Her face broke, even before she kissed her finger.
Anyway, ways, I do not believe.
Zarian's first pig. Tiens deepened their words, seeing his eyes and tears when the student notices a mistake. He looked at her to meet her, as if surprised when he saw his hand. He jumped onto the roof before the marker control and swallowed the situation. She yelled several times and quickly turned her head. Okay, well, I can give privacy to make sure the crew understands you. I will not let them force them. We have to take our ship, he said slowly, ready to use. Note that behind them is a series under her tail. Then, for you to change clothes. Anala remembered her resignation a little, listened to his sentences, and pointed again at his finger.
Of course you are from the sea!
She screamed loudly as she could, and her ears returned to her skull to look at them.
It's alright. What happened to me?
She called, looking closely at him and lifting a rope that looked like him. After a moment, she thought that she had finally decided to be very close. Not a good idea. Suddenly she leaped forward, the cat's forces, just like her body was a tree.
Why is this life so everlasting? Well, I'm not sure I'm ugly, but you want Marina?
She was wary of saying. She came face to face because she did not know what would happen. Play started slowly and started to see. Let me tell you, he said. Everyone wears dresses, and usually his dress. Now you are mine. I am not in the sea, and now I'll be a ship, because I need a fork, he said, pulling on the rope first and moving quickly without a mask. He just gave himself and assaulted his job, although he did not go anywhere and had time to balance. Finally, he was looking at it when removing the wood and fire in a balanced time. He opened to a rope in his left shoulder. Come on, it's quiet or power, and I do not want to do it. Although the mother is far superior to combat fighters, there are a few simple dangers. When she started wearing a uniform, she cried again. He saw that it was just red, and both raised their hands to clear their eyes.
What do you do? First you say I should go with me, and then the next thing I know is that the things are in front of me?
Objections, tears, and ears. Profound. In fact, she was so embarrassed that she did not even realize the first part of his remarks. But as soon as she got to the, and now I'll be a ship, because I need a fork, and listen, just the eyes behind, and really opened in her hands, and quickly started shaking her head, was able to keep your hands away from your face.
No, I said I cannot. Before I did not.
When you are reminded of his argument, despite the context in which the conversation is likely to develop extraordinarily, she noticed that he never followed his husband, and when he spoke, he had his place, thinking it was still on the floor, although it was not very strong, was fast, and has a cat balance. It is likely that the two will collide in their prayers. Pretty fucking intense prayers, man. Zarian thought he thought with his head. But apparently, he did not think with his head. So he was bloody. He closed his eyes, hugged his head. At this moment, Anla jumped and rode too on the floor. He returned to the floor, and again. Zarian Grunus. And then the pain in his back disappeared. He found it lasted a few seconds. So it didn't disappear, really. It was just, it just only lasted a few. His face was red lost, and of course a bit guilty. Why? It's really true. Name yours, he said. Finally, he understood what he was saying. That's one of us. Now it's one of those failures with those words. So, for me, started very hard. That's lewd, Zarian, come on. The Zarian began to stabilize before giving up. But at the same time, the rope began as it was, and when it was taken out and returned to the ship, they did not know that the majority of the rope bearing the uniforms is stronger and tries to communicate. When Anala first contacted Zarian, she did not know what had happened. She felt she was caught before she fell to the ground. She paused for a moment when she fell, trying to gather things and not realizing she was sitting in both sides of Zarian. In fact, she did not even notice it until she went, and with one hand, shook her head on his chest, while the other hand supported her. When she looked for a moment, she nodded briefly and leaned her head slightly passively.
Anala.
She slowly pierced before she noticed the position in which she was. Lewd. Her eyes when she realized the surprise, and the first wave of the tail. The man was surprised when his ears were red, but before she tried to wake up, she shouted.
No, I don't understand. I don't know, I must go.
She wants to go back to work and drive again. But when she tries to wake up, pull the rope, wandered through her body, and her arm was just one arm. That's, I always have that problem when I just want to go back to work and drive again, but, then I wake up and I pull the rope and wander through my body and the arm with just one arm, Fuck, I hate that. Her eyes as he understood this, and she was as scream when she tried to get up with a powerful force now. They are very touching this time. They were only a little touching before, but not quite when he was dancing because he made a rope motion when she tried to pull away, so very suddenly falling. After falling the rope, she took Zaren's hand, as she saw. She with a shock. Wide eyes. Also, I am also with a shock. Wide eyes. Refrain from Zarian and end. Meet with a broad vision, not your lips, and slightly damage the right people. I also like to slightly damage the right people. Just a little bit. I holds? And he said, as the eyes have seen bring not. Profound. He tried to deny it, which is a great link to the large number of places and their fell of the side of the belts. It is said, it is difficult to be a branch of the first. Yeah, I agree with that. It is pretty difficult to be a branch of the first. But, not to fall from the head of all things. And in that heat. Yeah, you don't really want to do that in that heat. It's pretty bad. But to fulfill make faces with red lips. Open your mouth so that it can be to say something. But only. Wenger was surprised that this is taken off. Slept. Now because they are not ropes, as they were, of whom it is, and is able to do what he can for the sake of others. When the wounded members so that the rope and pots, but it is. Pages. I'm going to... He looked confused. I am confused. At that time, the head of analysis was prepared as many... analysis. At that time, the head of analysis was prepared as an army mess when it was the last thing that had happened to her. Originally, when Zorian was at the top, he sat firm, the only sign of movement, and the ears and tail flashed like madness. She did not know what is going on, and she could not respond. In fact, she did not respond, at least until it fell Zarian, Lagatha, and nearly lost Kista. All she could do now was a surprise. Her face turned red, and drove him Zarian. Then came a strange part of all this, because Zarian sat down and began to return to shift and anal shift. Wait, what? Then Then came a strange part of all this, because Zarian sat down and began to return to shifting shift. This time, Kitcha took off his clothes lying on the ground, without tails. Her eyes are thought to be far enough away from the instruction placed, sticking her hand into the tree, using a long tail to hold the branches, when she climbed onto a tree trunk.
I can do it, do you?
Mock high, and the instruction placed dazzling tears of white eyes, a moment before it jumps to another tree, and then, with a second and quick movement, this woman walks away a lot, because it can be a sure clothes she left behind. Indeed. Zarian is flashing when his clothes fall and the cat flies, and talks to him until he loses. When he starts blinking. Twice. Then a little. He slowly took the rope, then the shape. Then he immediately saw her uniform. Perhaps the only thing in that case. Then I remind you again that this disease is not a dream. It's not a dream, guys. It's not a dream. It's a disease, okay? Here, he said, picked up her uniform. He looked for a moment and said, "Maybe Jack," at the same time, silently returning to the shore.